G'day y'all, it's The Edward Show. I'm your host, Edward Fox, and together we're going to dive into the lives and stories of extraordinary individuals I meet from every corner of our globe. G'day viewers and listeners, hey, or I should say, g'day y'all, it's The Edward Show. Another great episode. Today we have a good friend of mine, Dan Rogers, and I like the way Dan refers to himself. He refers to himself as a business finance coordinator. We're going to find out what that's all about and dig a little deeper into who Dan is and what he's got going on. G'day, Dan. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate the opportunity, and good day to you as well.
Good news.
It's an interesting thing. We'll just start right off the bat. You said coordinator, but I said consultant. You heard coordinator when I said consultant. Coordinator and consultant probably may live in some of the same bodies, but they probably also do some of the different things. And you and I are always talking about how words matter.
Right.
And I've never thought of myself as a coordinator of business finance, but that's kind of what I am. I kind of coordinate all the pieces and kind of line up all of the options and show what's possible, what's not possible. So I'm going to have to use your word into my own definition in the future.
Well, thanks for letting me get away with that because, yeah, that's absolutely what I heard when heard you say. And I'm like, in my head, it's going, he didn't say consultant, he said coordinator. But there you go. So
I'll have to listen to it back to see who was actually right on that. Because I'm not going to bet a lot that I was right.
Right. Well, and I didn't record that, so we will never know. It's gone into the ether. But it's interesting. I had my son, who's 28, is just getting into project management. He's always been an ideas guy and a fixer, kind of like me, and can look at a problem and fix the problem, right, with some creative solutions. And he came up with a term the other day, and now, of course, it's flown right out of my head, that I'm like, oh, similar to what you just said. I'd never thought of it in those terms, but that's pretty much exactly what he does. You know, it's this not a project manager or a business development officer, but this additional thing that he called it. Maybe I can find out and put it at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
So we're sitting here in Middle Tennessee. You have some different things going on. You've got a co-working space. You've got some financing things that you do. You've got some sales coaching. So we could take this conversation in any direction you want to go. But we were talking about you launching your own podcast. How's that coming along?
Probably for like a lot of people, it's coming along really slowly.
Okay.
I have plenty of things to talk about. Probably that's the problem is I want to boil the ocean, or at least boil a big lake when it comes to like what I want to be able to share and be part of the solution type thing. So I know the name of it. I know the format of it. I have a background in sales. I've only sold things my entire life, and this is the name. So I'm going to be kind of telling the world about it outside of my sticky notes here, which is I'm going to call it "How do you sell what you sell?" And so I can get anybody who's out in the world who is using their voice and their words and communication to generate their income or to generate company revenue. And it's probably a lot of people who are in that space. It could be the owner of a company. It could be the chief revenue officer. It could be a marketing director. It could be the down the street copier salesperson or a car salesperson or trade bank or money. Anybody who is using their words to talk to somebody else. What we want to hear when we're in sales is we want to hear somebody say, "Oh, I've never heard about it or thought of it like that," which is like the coordinator. I've never thought about that. I've never heard that question before. I've never thought of that as an option before. Usually that's when salespeople make their commission checks, like a really, really good check commission, where they take somebody who's not necessarily open to something and they suddenly become into a buying modality right in front of the seller. So anyhow, how do you sell what you sell? It's just going to be a conversation of what's working, what's not working, what are you doing that you need to do more of, what are you doing that you need to stop? What do you know that other people are doing in sales, i.e. a podcast that you should be doing, but you're not? So just I'll take that. I'll do some basic interview formats. And then from what people talk about in their actual mechanism to sell, I'll then make a couple educational podcasts right behind it dovetailing on how this person does it. This is what it means to use a CRM. This is what it means to use LinkedIn. This is what it means to use the phone, and then actually weave some of my educational bits back into those pure education moments after I'm inspired by the person who's selling what they sell.
You know the one I want to hear? I want
What's
to
that?
I want to hear the one where the introvert gets on with you and says, I can't sell. I'm not a salesperson, and then proceeds to sell you on the idea that they can't sell, right?
Yeah, so
You know,
that's actually my answer. I've actually used it on people as well. And I was like, man, you're one for one with me. Like I'm already convinced that you're terrible.
right.
Um, Good
Yeah.
job.
So I had a lady come to me in Wichita and she said, if you know any part-time jobs, I need to make some money. I said, well, go sell some accounts for me. She goes, I can't sell. I said, tell me more. And she
Yeah.
listed off all these. I said, now you've got me in a conundrum, because I don't know if I believe you. If I believe that you can't sell, you've
I
sold
got it.
me on the idea
Yeah.
that you can't sell.
Yeah.
And I said, give it a shot. I said, you're a trainer. You sit in a class, you work in a classroom with young adults to try and get them to listen to what you're doing. I said, that's sales. You're selling them on the idea that you've got valuable information for them and they need to listen to you. And she goes, I never looked at it like that. And she went on and sold like 17 accounts for me in like 3 months, part-time.
Yeah.
She did great.
Yep. So it's such an interesting thing. When people think of salespeople, they think of the person who calls them out of the blue, offering something that they don't want, and they can't get them off the phone easily. And so they actually have to trigger the rude button inside themselves. They're
Right.
like, oh my gosh, this salesperson forced me to be rude, like break rapport with another human being. When we're walking in the mall and the Jack Weasel like pops out from nowhere and just starts putting lotion on you, like get away from me,
Or
Silence of the Lambs.
spraying the
Yeah, I don't.
perfumes.
Yeah, like, do you want to talk about this? Like, don't you want to have softer skin? Like they ask these the lamest leading questions,
Right.
the obvious, of course, dummy questions. And so that's what people think of when they think about sales. But it's the person at the restaurant who comes and takes your order, like, hey, we only have 5 left, but we've got this special today that is really good. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but if you guys are adventuresome, just order the special, and everybody else, yeah, we'll take it. Like that's possible. That's not possible. That is sales. That is
Right.
expressing a sequence of words to a particular person to compel them or interest them or open their mind to be more curious about a particular thing. And it's you know, everything. I think everything in sales can be taken back right into a bar, like a singles bar. Like back in the day before I was married, what was it like to be trying to court, somebody else? It's all sales. It's all sales. Well, take it back. There's marketing, which is your shirt and your cologne and the car you drive. That's marketing. But the actual conversation becomes sales. So everything is sales. And the people who think that they can't do it, they immediately think about they don't want to spray somebody with perfume, or they don't want somebody to drive home in a car that they don't want to buy. They don't
Right.
want to put them in a timeshare that's going to bankrupt them in 2 years. But sales is it's just how we get revenue in our business. It's how we get what we want in our lives. So there's no reason to demonize it as much as you. But
Well,
I
I
got
think
to tell you this:
go on.
salespeople have made it the worst for salespeople. We ruined the letter system. We ruined the phone. We ruined email. We can't have nice things. Salespeople cannot have nice things.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Salespeople are their own worst enemy, because they've done all those things. You're exactly right. Can you remember the first thing you ever sold?
I absolutely 100%. I was 6 years old. I was in Little League, and we had this hit-a-thon sponsorship thing. So if like you had a sheet, like everybody was responsible for like a sheet of names, and people would pledge like $1, $2 for you to hit the ball as far as you can. And my parents were adamant that they would not take these things to work. And so my mom said, if you're going to do this, you need to go figure out who can, you have to go tell people that you need them to do this. And I don't remember like the pre moment, but I do remember going to every single person in my neighborhood. and I'd fill up a sheet, and I'd go back to my coach. It's like, hey, I need another sheet. In fact, give me 4 more sheets. I remember this conversation. I was like 6 or 7 years old. And because I would just go to somebody's door, I would just knock, knock. How's it going? My name's Dan. I live in the neighborhood, and I'm doing this thing where I'm trying to rate like, and I got like 4 and 5 sheets filled up, knocking on people's doors, asking for $5, $2, whatever it was. I would win bicycles. I have a mitt signed by Reggie Jackson. I've got all these things that I won because I would bring in the most sponsorships. So there I am, 6 years old in sales. But I kind of parlayed that. I thought I was going to be a police officer, which is also a form of sales. Um, but when I was 19, I got my first real sales job. I was in the car business at 19 years old. I bought a car. My salesperson was 18, and I said, "Wow, you're 18. Do you think I could sell cars?" And the guy says, "Why don't you come back tomorrow and put a shirt and tie on and figure it out?" Came back the next day, 19 years old in college, and the guy's like, "So you want to sell cars?" I was like, "Yeah, I think I'd be pretty good at it." He's like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, I kind of like cars and I kind of like people, and I get to go drive cool cars all the time." I'm like, "What's wrong with that?" He's like, "There's the new cars, there's the U cars. Here's your key. Come get me when you get a customer who's interested." I swear to God, that was my first day of that, and I started selling like 10 minutes later. Um, and then how I immediately realized that sales was something that, like any sport or any instrument or anything like acting, you have to practice it. Second day on the job, I get a call, and I tell the story all the time. I get a call from Eric Lamont. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but Dan Rogers Sales Tower, Dan Rogers Sales Tower. And I run up to the sales tower, and he says, "Hey, uh, I saw you talk to that person, and then you gave them your business card, and they left." And that happened really fast. It's like, "Yeah, so they're looking for this particular thing, and we didn't have it, and I just told them we'd have it, but I gave my card. They're going to call me, and if they're," he's like, "You just unsold them uh, in 30 seconds." I think that's like how we phrase it, which actually became the nexus for my sales course when I was a sales coach, is how to stop unselling people in the first 20 or 35 seconds. And as soon as that happened, I said, "Okay, so what can I do differently about that?" He's like, "Go in the training room. There's a bunch of videos. Watch the videos." And I started watching Joe Verdi, Joe Girard, all these classic car guys. What we say as a salesperson, whether it's frontline on a car lot, cold calling somebody, or they come into your retail establishment, whatever happens to me, we only have control over our words. And I would say that most humans don't even have 100% explicit control over the words. Like, "Oh, I didn't mean to say that." It happens all the time. Like, there's whole TV shows built around, "I didn't mean to say that." So, anyway, my first sales job was knocking door to door, but my first real sales job was as hardcore as you could possibly get, selling cars. And it didn't matter. Like, and still today, I'm in my 40s. The words I choose to use, the order that I choose to use them, it's really the only thing I have control over. And by doing it and kind of testing and playing and practicing, I feel like I'm pretty good now. I feel like I can teach that stuff. But it's interesting how people who are not good in sales never think about the words they use, and they have what I call the wing it mentality, which it's just really hard to replicate. It's really hard to get better at that. So
Right.
long answer, but
Well, I
door
think
to
you're
door
right.
sales.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you and I have talked about, I've done sales all my life as well. And I remember my first sales gig was as a 7-year-old. I would go around to construction sites and pick up all the Coke bottles and turn them in for 5 cents. Now, I
Yeah.
didn't realize this was sales because it seems like it's not sales. It seems like you're a junk collector, that you're turning that junk into cash. But I had to convince the roofers who love throwing the bottles off into the used bricks and hearing them smash. I had to
Yes.
convince them that it was better to help the 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid and give him a bottle that he can turn in for a nickel
Yep.
than the enjoyment they got out of smashing it. And
Yes.
then I turned that into selling them cold Cokes. I'd go to work with Dad on a Saturday morning, have my little red wagon. The local Greek guy at the convenience store where I turned in the Coke bottles, he said, "Well, why don't you sell them?" He said, "Don't drink them because you'll drink your profits, because I still need to get paid. But I'll give you the ice, I'll give you the cooler, I'll give you the pop, and you can make 20 cents a bottle." And so that was my first gig. But my first real sales job, I was convincing my mum and dad to let me open a convenience store at 15. And then what I did is I started selling. After the convenience store was open, we were running into sales is a solution to a problem, right? I'm
Yeah.
trying to find the right background here, but it's that solution to the problem that you come up with. And the problem we were having was that we had video rentals and people would steal our video rentals. Okay. And so I came up with this solution, and I'm putting it in my background now, where just on a single sheet of paper, these were all blank, and I just had the boxes drawn, and it's got, 4 and 8 on the back and 1 on the spine. So it had 9 boxes that I could sell for advertising. And then it had the box up the top right that said, you hired this movie from Fox's Videos. Please return it to 245 Queen Street, Grafton, New South Wales, Australia. Or it probably just says 245 Queen Street, Grafton. And so I told my dad, I said, I think I can go out and sell this and make about $4,000. He said, there's no way. Nobody will pay more than $30 an ad. And I said, well, I'm going to charge $250 on the back, $350 on the front, and $500 on the spine, because I think they sit on top of your VCR, because it was a front loader, and everybody would see Boyd, Boland, Ford all the time. And he says, no way. So I don't know whether it was reverse psychology or whatever, but I went out and sold that as a 15-year-old or 16-year-old in 2 weeks. And made $4,000 profit, because I bartered with the printer. He could come in and get movie rentals to cover the cost of the printing.
Done.
Yeah, simple. And so I did that. And then the second year I did it again, but I added another color. I think I added green, red, and black with the 3 colors. None of the advertisers stayed the first year, so that was disappointing, but I had to resell it to everybody again. And again, I sold it. I think this one took me about 3 weeks to sell, because some of the fear was setting in with going into the businesses in my little town. But that was my original sales introduction. And you and I we've talked about my weaknesses in sales. I don't mind talking about it. I use units, groups like BNI and other groups where I can build the relationship and eventually ask for the sale. Whereas you've tried to educate me and teach me, just ask for the sale early on and you'll be making a lot more money a lot quicker. And that stuff, still, we've talked about those. But I find it interesting that I had a Zoom where I brought on 5 20-year-olds called Share the Knowledge. And I had Achille from AC Crew. I had Katie Boone from real estate. I had Jimmy Moyers from real estate. I had Ashlyn, my daughter, as a graphic designer. I had another business coach and stuff that was a young coach, although I found out one of them was like 35, but she looks like she's 15, right? And so I had these people on. I said, what is the biggest thing that you've learned? Or, and I expected them all to say sales, right? What is the biggest thing that you think a young person could learn? And not one of them said selling. And so I put it back on them. I said, guys, everything that you're saying and talking about is selling. Why don't you think selling is the number one key that young people should learn? And they go, oh, you know what? You're right. It's all selling. But we just don't like to think about selling. We think of selling in a negative term.
So it's again, salespeople ruin everything. And it's an amazing thing. If you were to run a business, would you want the people who transacted with you to be buyers? Like they've researched it, they know, like imagine cars or shoes or mortgages, whatever happens to be, and they've researched it for 5 months. They're ready to go. They got all their funds going, and they come in. They're like, "Hey, I know you're selling these cars, these shoes, this consulting, but I know I can get it for a lot less. And I know that if I buy with my American Express card, I can just charge back. And I know that if I don't pay my payment, you're still going to deliver the service." And you're like, whoa, you're a super educated buyer. Do you want that person? Maybe not. So I find that there's so much more value in the Chet Holmes triangle. It's the people who aren't thinking about it, or they thought about it and then it's probably not a fit, where they think, like the very first thing that we had this misunderstanding of a word, where they think that cars are only for right-handed people, but they didn't know that they have cars for left-handed people too. They're the exact same car with just, you just lefties just, anyhow, when people are in sales and they start to think, what is it I can ask or say or share, where the person on the other side is like, you know what? I never thought about buying a second house, or I never thought about buying a house that I wasn't living in. I mean, I always thought that I had to live in the house that I bought, the first one. But if you're saying I can buy a house and not live in it, because I love living downtown, I love living with my parents, I love living with my uncle, whatever it is, but I can buy a house, rent it out, get in the game, but not actually live there. Because what I want to live in is a mansion, but I can just buy this little, small place in the outside of town. I never thought I should buy a truck, but now that you're like, I never thought about financing a car. I never thought about borrowing for business. But now that you're talking about it, that does actually illuminate a problem that maybe I didn't even know existed. And I call it like the X-ray. It's a cough. Everybody, like, imagine all of your prospects have a cough. And you're like, I have an X-ray. We'll either figure out that it's just like a little bit of allergies, or it's tuberculosis, or it's pneumonia, or it's stage 4 cancer, man, and you're going to die. The job of the seller is to talk, ask questions, share information that allows the person to look in the mirror and shine a flashlight on their own soul, problem, challenge, their own operation, their own process, whatever it is, their own life. And it's when we are good in sales that people start looking at themselves in their own mirror accurately.
Right.
And I use this analogy every now and then. This one is just so easy that if imagine a fitness trainer, they're walking in the mall, they go to the food court in the mall, and all they did was walk up, and they're wearing their fitness gear, and they have a stack of business cards, and they walk up to all the people who look like they have a sedentary lifestyle, who look like they could lose a few pounds, and they said, here's my card, I'm a fitness trainer, you need fitness training. I bet you they get 0% sales.
Right.
So we can't point out a problem that's so obvious that people either dismiss it or they get offended, whatever happens to be. So we have to allow people to go through this process of discovery that, you know what, yes, in fact, that cough is something that can be fixed, and this person can fix it, and it is a fixable, the price is within my budget. So it's just fascinating when we're talking about young people and they think selling is doing something that somebody else doesn't want.
Right.
Like that, for there to be a transaction, I must not want this phone. I must not want this calculator because the guy or the gal sold it to me. Therefore, I must always be the loser of the deal. And
Right.
then there's this really interesting thing called a win-win parallax, where we have win-loss and win-loss, or loss-win. If I win all the time as a seller and I charge exorbitant rates to my buyers, they're going to feel a sense of loss and they're never going to buy from me again. If my buyers feel the sense that they win, where they got the best price I've ever sold for in my entire life, if I keep doing that, I'll go out of business.
Right.
So we have to find this really unique thing, this overlap of suits and satisfies both people. That's where sustainable business is, but that's selling. You have to find that place where maybe they started off at a lower number and you brought them up. Maybe they started off at a shorter period and you brought them up, whatever happens to be. But again, the misconception of sales. I hope all three of my kids get in sales. At best, I think I might get one. So it's just look in, anybody who's watching this, look in your office. What do you see that had to be sold? Somebody had to sell the plastic to the company to manufacture the printers or the monitors. Somebody had to sell the glass. Somebody had to, sell the phone. Like all these things, everything needs to be exchanged with a price and words. Simple as that.
Well,
And that's honorable.
Yeah, it is honorable. And then when you think about it and dig in it to more, I just had a guy on the show, Prosper, from originally from Zimbabwe, lives in Melbourne, Australia. And we were talking about, and actually that episode will come out before this. We were talking about the attitude of gratitude, right? He's in digital marketing. And he says, but you look around and you think about everything like you just mentioned, somebody had to do the work to bring that to market. right? We get to enjoy a flushing toilet because some guy is working in the shitty job of the treatment plant to make sure that our sewer works,
Well,
right?
think about even further back. There's a person who had to sell the person on working in the mine to get the nickel and the tin and the copper and the iron to make the faucet. There's
Right.
somebody who had to convince the person to go to the foundry. It's not a foundry, the kiln where they actually make the porcelain toilets. And there's somebody who had to convince somebody to drive the truck, to load the truck, and then drive the truck, and then unload. Like all of the things along the way of all of these things, and we could get like super woo woo way out there.
Right.
Everybody had to be compelled or convinced. I mean, how many really attractive wives out there, including my own, have a husband who is not as handsome as they want?
Right.
Like a lot, like a lot.
Yeah.
And
Good.
I can always tell somebody's sales ability by the like how
Right.
much
Gorgeous
followings they.
wife,
Yeah,
average guy. Yeah.
super great salesperson.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. And
100%.
probably, and normally a good sense of humor too.
Yes,
So,
that
because good sense of humor works. But I think you're exactly right. So let's transition away from sales, even though
okay.
that you and I know virtually everything is selling. Now I'm selling them on the idea that we're going to transition. It's still sales. But think about the other things that you do. I'd like you to talk a little bit about, especially the financing aspect of what you do. We said, a business finance consultant, or I said coordinator. And I think as a business owner, for me, and a lot of my stuff is geared towards business, so my listeners are used to it being geared towards business. I don't think a lot of them realize how much financing options are out there. They think,
Yeah.
I went to the bank and I got turned down, so I can't buy this business. You and I have had hours and hours of conversations of different financing options
Yes.
that are available that people don't even think about. So do you want to cover about 10 minutes on that?
I can do that. So we're going to talk about capital, 10 minutes.
Okay, so we were talking about a little bit about the financing that's out there and available.
Yeah. All right. So I have a presentation I give, and I give it to sometimes one person at a time. Sometimes I give it to a room of people at a time, and it's how business. It's the ways in which business can access capital, and the first one is there's capital and there's loans. All right. And again, overlapping Venn diagram, all loans are capital, but not all capital are loans. So that's my first piece there. In all of my loan brokering days, I've been kind of a student of the world of most finance for small business. Like, what are the available options? And a traditional bank loan is two of those options. So we have like a big bank, and then you have like your local bank. I feel like those are different options. But all in total, I think there's 16 options, and they live on a spectrum of really expensive, really cheap, really easy to get, really hard to get. And I have them all kind of plot on this graph. And so an example would be somebody who says, "Oh, I want an investor to finance my building, to provide the capital for my business." So that would live on the most expensive quadrant and the most difficult to get, because investors are like investing companies are looking for gigantic deals, are looking for amazing things, and it's going to cost you 25 to 50 49% of your business. Like, think Shark Tank, like think about that type of transaction. On the other end, there is the most difficult but the cheapest, which is like an insurance company. This is Mutual of Omaha, this is Prudential, this is Aflac, where they're buying or they're lending 25 million to $2 billion on real estate. It's long-term 10-year, 20-year rates, and these are providing the interest income for their annuities. So it's really, really inexpensive. Most people can't get it, and it's really hard to get. Investors, really, really hard to get. Most people will never get it, but it's really expensive. But inside the middle ground, there's bank loans, traditional bank loans. And then you have other loans, which is like a private money loan, an SBA loan, a USDA loan, a CDFI loan. Other little mechanisms, or short-term like a loan, like a merchant card advance. There's all these little mechanisms which I think that all of these options are available and they're good for the right person at the right time. Some people have 2 options, some people have 6. Nobody has all of the options because
Right.
it just, it doesn't work like that. So as a business broker, I would just show people, I would collect all of their information. I would say, based on what you're telling me, you have this much in accounts receivable, you have this much in signed contract, you've got these 2 rental properties, you got this credit score, this is the timing, this is what you want to buy, this is what you want to do, not long term. These are your options right now in 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. And most business owners, they operate their business from one of 3 platforms. So the first platform is they start their business with their own money. They operate their business with their own money. They grow their business with the business money, and they go 20 years or 5 years, whatever it is, and they never need to borrow. They
Right.
never think they need to borrow, and they never actually need to borrow. The other, on the inverse of that, is somebody who's like, I can't start this business without 100,000, a million, or $100 million, and I need that in order to get the factory, to get the molds, to get the like. They know they can't even, they won't even be revenuing for 2 years, but they're going to take on $50 million of capital. So they know they're going to open up the business, they have to get capital. And then the other one is a business that is able to start, get off the ground, a construction company, a consulting agency, whatever it happens to be. And at some point they realize, oh, I do need money. And it could be after 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And so you have these 3 businesses, and there's kind of a fourth, which is they think that they don't need the money, and then all of a sudden one day they're like, "Wow, I've got $200,000 of payroll, and all of my suppliers, all my clients aren't paying me. I don't know what to do." And then they need to go out and get capital. So when people are able to see more options, and I fully believe that the business owner and the person, um, those 2 things, the ones with the most options win.
Right.
And if you only know that if you think you have one option and it's your own bank and you can't get a loan, you're like, well, I guess I can't start a business. Like that's the logic that really holds a lot of people back. And that's where when I start talking to people about capital, they say, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was a possibility. I didn't know that I could negotiate the terms of my own vendors. I didn't even know I could negotiate the terms of my own clients. I didn't know I should be sending my clients to collections. I didn't know, never heard of, never been asked that. And then they start seeing these options. They're like, wow, now I can really grow and expand. Now I can really lower my cost of goods. Now I can really take on another business and buy a book of business and buy revenue. Um, so it's complex. But it's no different than chess. There's just a lot of pieces.
Right.
Once you learn what all the pieces do at particular times on the board, you can say, okay, at this particular time, this is my move. I need to go get a factoring facility because I need the cash right now, and I've got 300 grand on AR, and I need to start my next job, and I'm going to borrow from Peter to pay Paul right now. Or I've got a long-term move. I'm looking to buy a building next year, and I'm going to start the process of applying and getting all my financials in order, getting my credit repaired, getting money saved up so I can buy a building next year. You're going to need 1 of 2 or 3 different types of loans. It's going to be a traditional commercial real estate loan. And how do you prep for that long-term business expense? And where I see business owners making the largest mistakes possible is when they're not planning for it and they suddenly need it.
Right.
And now they need fast cash. Fast cash is terrible cash because it's the worst terms for you. You're exposing your entire bank account to some of these capital providers. You're certainly not getting the right terms. And I say terms, interest rate is one of those terms. But if I offered you $1 million at 0%, would you take that loan, Ed?
Any other caveats?
Well, that's part of the story, Ed. Would you
Oh,
want a
okay.
million dollars
Yes,
if I
I
can?
want $1 million at no interest. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So it's a 12-month payback period.
Okay.
So you have $83,000 a month that you have to pay me back every single month. And if you miss one payment by 1 minute, I'm going to foreclose on your house and I'm going to take all of your assets.
I see. Yes. Okay.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, maybe now you want to have a $1 million spread over 25 years at $7,000 a month, but your $1 million at 7% over 25 years actually ends up costing you $1.9 million.
Right.
So what's important? And this is again where people make a lot of mistakes. They think the interest rate is important.
Right.
It's important, but it's an algebra form. It's literally like loan amount, term, interest rate, payment.
Right.
They all are important in their own way. They are all part of the formula.
Well,
It's A, B, and C.
right now as we talk, of course, interest rates are record high for mortgages, and or all interest rates are high.
No, they're not. Stop
No,
it.
no, no,
You're,
no,
you're,
no.
you're
Listen, listen.
perpetuating the propaganda. They're not all-time high for mortgages. That's not
I
even
didn't
close. Don't say that.
I didn't say all-time high. I said high.
You said, okay, all right.
Okay. In the mindset of the individuals going out and buying a house, they're being held back by the interest rates. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. These interest rates are nothing, right?
Yeah.
So
All that has to happen is people's price comes down. Like it's a payment. You lower the price at a higher rate, you have the same payment. It's $2,000 a month. Like historically, that's the payment that people settle on to buy a house, like within a stone's throw of $2,000 a month.
right. It's funny to me how they want to look at the interest rate, the annual interest rate, and what they're paying. And I said, no, no, no. Look at what you're paying in interest over the entire life. Even if you only got 2 or 3% interest or 4% interest, don't worry about the 8% interest now. What's Kevin Watson say? Date the rate
and marry the property.
Marry the property, because I can always refinance down the road. Yes. I'm more worried about 30 years of interest than the interest rate for a year or two. So I'm just saying that I think that that's people that are allowing themselves to be stopped by the interest rate short term adds to your story, I think.
100%, 100%. And it's I always ask the question, like, what are we trying to do here? And if somebody's trying to buy a house, then they really and truly do need to stay 25% less than their proposed budget. Like come up with a budget and go 25% less than that, and that's your budget.
Live within your means.
Yeah. Either move to a different place, go get a second job, or buy less house, or buy a house that you're not actually living in as your starter house. Because if you buy a $250,000 house now that you're not living in, and in 3 years that's worth $350,000, and now you have $100,000 put down on the $1 million house, like that's better than coming into the $1 million house with 30 grand now. But it's for businesses though, like a car truck, like a personal car truck, you need to be able to justify it.
And it's like buying a tape measure for a carpenter, right? You need it to do your work. If you need the truck for work, then you should be able to justify that this truck will carry this much lumber or this much tools, will get me from job to job to job better than my Geo Metro.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but when we're looking at business loans, and I'm having I'm in a negotiation with a person right now. They want to buy a big hotel. Him and two partners want to buy a big hotel. And they've taken 60 days going back and forth with me and negotiating, all these little things. Guess what's happened in the last 60 days to the 5-year treasury, which is the rate, one of the indexes we follow. It's gone up by 0.4, which is more than the amount of money that they've negotiated. So they've actually gone backwards by negotiating. And this is they're signing the term sheet here pretty soon. And I said something to the other day. I was like, you guys are trying to buy a $6.5 million hotel that's actually worth $9.5 million. And you're getting an amazing deal. You're walking into this fully functioning restaurant hotel that's underperforming, and you're negotiating with me on $500 a month, and you've already cost yourself $40,000. But what are you really trying to accomplish? You're really trying to accomplish buying this hotel. And they said, yes. It's like, I'm not going to negotiate with you anymore because it's actually costing you more money. So I'm done. You guys just need to buy the hotel and understand you're making $3 million and stop worrying about paying a little bit more rate. And the guy's like, you know what? I wish we would have heard this from you a while back, Dan, because you are totally right. We think that the interest rate is so important, but we're actually missing out on hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And so again, business, if you're in business for yourself, for God's sake, do not watch Dave Ramsey. Do not listen to him. Do not listen to Susie Orman, because they say that you have to pay cash for everything. Well, Dave Ramsey has a building that he didn't pay cash for. I drive by it every single day. Or not every, but like,
I get it.
if
Yes.
you're in business, the tool must support itself. And I think that's where a lot of business owners get in trouble. They start buying things that are for their own personal pleasure, like the really, really amazing lobby area of their office where 3 people come in a month. That was for them.
Right.
So it doesn't pay for itself. So anyhow, if you're in business, just ask yourself, what is it I'm really trying to accomplish? Grow gross, improve net profits, and then sometimes we'll talk about lowering expenses. I think lowering expenses is actually the least important thing, because it's a finite number, and you can only you have to have some expenses. You can't get it to zero.
You'd
But
be
you can
better
grow
off
your
time spent on selling more and increasing revenue.
But if somebody is allergic or has a phobia to selling, they're going to spend all day long in the spreadsheet because that's safe.
Right.
Nobody's going to say no to them on their spreadsheet on expenses. And they won't have to, when they're talking about cutting back on using color prints in the office, they don't have to go talk to a new customer.
Right.
And so these are the things where people kind of get trapped in. And I found that in my roles as a sales coach and a business finance person, sometimes people would come to me and they say, Dan, I need your sales coaching. I said, let's take a look at everything. And I look at their numbers, I look at their P&L, and I look at their debt schedule. I was like, why do you need to have sales coaching? Because I'm not making any money. I was like, well, you've got $500,000 on a 2-year term. How about we just restructure this loan? So instead of, see if I can do the math here. Instead of $26,000 a month, it'll be $11,000 a month. That's a lot of stuff that you won't have to sell. And they're like, oh, I never thought about it like that. Same inverse thing. Somebody comes in like, hey, I want some more money, more money, more money. Well, let's take your look. Look at your books. Hey, it looks like your gross revenues is going down and down and down. What do you want the money for? Well, we got to pay our past bills. I was like, no. We need to sell our way out of this problem. We need to go get more clients. Well, I don't have time to go get more clients. Why? Because I'm trying to get capital. Stop trying to get capital. Like business owners will often think that their problem is either get more money or the problem is get more leads. And sometimes it's completely opposite.
Yeah.
And I just had the luxury of being able to sit back and see people tell me that their problem is X. And all of the data in front of me is like, your problem is actually negative X. It's actually on the other side of the zero by a long ways.
Right.
And they're like, but I really don't like sales, but I'm really bad at getting a loan. Now I understand what the real challenge is.
Right.
And so that's part of being in business as a business consultant and just being in business myself, my wife. What is the thing that's important? Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's the customer. Sometimes it's the customer, sometimes it's money. Like it's never constant, it's always changing.
And there's so much things you can be creative with out there. For me, I have people come to me all the time. They're like, oh, I wish I could start a business, but I got no money. Well, then start a business that costs no money. I mean, what can you do that costs you absolutely $0 tomorrow? I'm sure you and I could throw out half a dozen things that they could start for under $100, right?
Yes.
I think of pooper scooping. You need a bucket, you need a pair of gloves or a picker-upper, and you need somewhere to get rid of it, right? And you need to print some flyers that you can hand out. You go knock on doors and say, hey, you need a pooper scooper? I do this weekly for $25 or whatever it is. So when I started my convenience store, I had people put stuff in on consignment because I couldn't afford to pay it. Right. Yeah. So the milkman would put 100 liters of milk in. The next day, I've sold 30 liters of milk. I pay him for those 30 liters of milk.
Yeah.
Right. To me, it was very simple. People that say, oh, I wish I could afford real estate. You can afford real estate. Number one, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Oh, I can't afford to buy the book. Then go borrow it from a friend. Go to the library. It doesn't cost you anything. Okay. Find it as a PDF online. You got to. Anyway, but you could put together, you and I, if we had no money and we wanted to buy a property, we would go out and find people that have the money. We would put them in a group with us. You and I would do the legwork and get them their profits, and they would pay for the real estate because we're doing the effort to make the deal go together. We've got no money into it, but we've got the sweat equity and we've got the knowledge to put the consortium, for a lack of a better word, together. And we all own 25% of the property.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. I often find that when people start saying why they can't do something, um, if they will allow it, you could pull that thread all the way back to Adam and Eve. And what I mean by that is they can say, well, I don't have the money for the book. I don't have the money to go to the library to get the card. I don't have this. And but if you start pulling on other threads like, but you smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Well, so like when people start giving those lame excuses, it's keeping them safe. So you have to kind of honor and respect it, but just totally understand that all humans are designed to not go above, like to not go over the horizon. Like over the horizon is scary. Over the horizon is a new book. Over the horizon is a new person. Over the horizon is a new piece of thing that you learned. And
right.
People die over the horizon.
Right.
Or they either die or they never come back. And that's scary.
Right.
And so we have to, like in business and as salespeople and as humans, have to understand that if somebody can't recognize in their own self that they can't figure out how to get an app on their phone to download a free book. By the way, if you go to YouTube, the number of people who just do free voiceovers for entire books on YouTube, try that one out. It's like you'll find some guy from Australia narrating Catcher in the Rye. You're like, this is kind of a trip listening to the Catcher in the Rye from somebody from Perth. Like right. I never heard of it in this kind of context before. So it is, people are humans. This is a key trait of humans, are absolutely wired to share cultural important stuff. And then here's my example. Hey, there's a bunch of wolves over there. Don't go over there. Okay. Hey, there's sea dragons. There be dragons on the old maps is what it said, like when in the unknown. Don't go over there. That food is poisonous. That person is dangerous. That honey is good. This dad joke is funny. What is like you love dad jokes, and I love about you. So what's the best thing about learning a new dad joke? To me, it's telling somebody else.
Right. Sharing. And so sharing the joke.
Humans are in the business of sharing information and sharing wisdom. So if you think that there's not somebody else on the internet who's got a video on the best way to poop up or pick up dog poop, you're crazy. Like that video is out there. Right. Like there's somebody who's making $150 a day, $200 a day cash in a few hours picking up dog poop. They walk in, they turn on the water, they do a couple things, and they shake out the dog bed, and they play with the dog a little bit, and they pick up the poop, and they run. It's 10 minutes, and they made $8 in 10 minutes. If they did $10 in 10 minutes, that's $100 an hour, quote unquote. There's people who would teach you how to do that, how to become a loan broker, how to become a real estate person, how to become a salesperson, how to become an author. Like, it's people who are not willing to learn are the ones that really have no excuses, but they actually have the most excuses. So it's kind of an interesting catch-22.
I think about the franchise I bought back in 2012, and I didn't have the money. He wanted 300 grand, right? I said, look, here's the deal. I'll give you 50 and I'll pay the rest monthly for the next 6 or 7 years at 5%, right?
Yep.
The business made the payment.
Yes.
All I had to do was come up with the initial 50 grand, which I did by selling some stock that we sold at the perfect time. People don't realize that owner carry, or whatever you call it, I don't know what the right term is, but seller financing maybe.
Yeah,
where the seller carries the note. Well, it's still income for them. They're not having to work in the business. Now, you want to make sure that the guy's not going to run down the business or whatever, but you can put safeguards in place, right? So people didn't realize that can be done. It's this knowledge that, like you said, it's all out there on the internet. They can find it on YouTube. They can read books. They can learn this stuff. it's like that they want to do this, keep my head close to the sand like the ostriches do, lay it on the ground. They don't want to look up and see what the opportunities are, because they like their comfort zone. They like being on this side of the horizon, right?
Right. So I've got a quote for you that I probably, if we've spent enough time around each other, I probably have told you this quote. But I have a quote that I share with people every now and then when they're kind of in that rut of being stuck. It's, we are tomorrow who we were today, aside from three things: the places we go, the people we meet, and the books we read. So think about this. If we're not doing those three things, we're going to be the same tomorrow as we were today. And what's crazy is you can go read a book and go someplace at the same time. You go where the book is. You can read a book and meet somebody at the same time. You can go someplace and meet somebody. You can go someplace and read a book. So you can do more than one at the same time. But if you are, and this is an interesting thing, we have, as sellers, we have to make sure that we're selling into an actual challenge. And I tell the funny story that I can't tell right now. It's about my wife trying to solve a problem that my son was not experiencing. And if somebody's not experiencing a problem, it's like the old guy with the wooden wagon, and he's rolling a wagon load of gold to the bank every single day. And a wagon salesperson, a truck salesperson, an automated salesperson sees him spilling out a couple of nuggets, and he says, "I've got the solution. I've got the solution. I've got the solution." And the guy wheeling the wagon full of gold to the bank says, "What you see are the couple nuggets that spill out. And you're right. I have an old wagon, and I do realize it's inefficient. But don't you realize something? I'm taking a wheelbarrow full of gold to the bank every single day. I don't have time for the nuggets. It's actually not a problem that I'm worried about. It's the bank's vault isn't big enough to hold all my gold. That's my actual real problem." So as if somebody doesn't actually have a problem, they will never buy the solution. If you walk to somebody who is, um, if you tell a terrible salesperson that they need sales coaching, what are they going to do?
No, I don't.
No,
Well,
no, they
it's
don't.
like your analogy that your fitness trainer walking up to fat people like me in the mall saying, "Oi, you're fat. You need some. You need to work that off. Come, let me coach you and help you."
Oh, you're all these things, like 100%. Unless they realize that there's a problem, no sale can be made. And I say this all the time, which is, unless you're talking about a challenge that's actually important to them, stop talking.
Right.
And it has to be an actual challenge that I think that lives between number 4 and number 12 on the top 15. If it's a top 3 priority, dude, you already have a gym membership. You already have a sales coach. You already have an investment advisor. You already have an insurance. Like, I know I got it. Of course, insurance is important. I've already got plenty of insurance. Like,
Right.
it's so important. It is a top 3 priority. But on a priority this, like a number 6, they're thinking about it. It's like my podcast. Like, it's a priority light,
Ish.
a priority ish. And when if somebody was to come to me and say, "Dan, show up to this house on the weekend for 6 hours, bring 45 note cards, and we're going to film these things, and I'm going to cut it up, and I'm going to splice it up, and you're going to do your thing, bring 4 changes of clothing." And so we're going to bang out all these things one day, and after 3 months, we're going to have enough material for me to write a book, and we're going to do all this stuff. And I'm going to say, you know what? This has been an 11 priority. It's been a 6. It's been super important. It's on here. It's on my little note card, but I can't get it into the top 3. I didn't know that I could just go to somebody's house and just go talk for 6 hours and they do all the work. Boom, top 2. And so now, whenever we find these things, and I call it the drawbridge or the rope ladder or the rope swing, we all run into chasms and gaps. Like, you're walking in life, and then you walk up to the Grand Canyon. You're like, well, shit, how am I going to get across this thing? Somebody got across the Grand Canyon,
Right.
or they went around it, or they flew
Right.
over the top of it. And a chasm could be a 3 foot wide, really, really, really deep crevasse. Like, you can't even see the bottom. Like, it's not that hard to get over, but if I make a mistake, it's over. I'm dead. Or it's really, really wide and it's really, really shallow, but your feet are going to get wet. All we are as salespeople are the things that help people get across those gaps. Hey, I help people get across the gap between wanting to buy real estate and buying real estate. I help people wanting to get rid of inventory, but they don't want to. They don't have the customers. Whatever the thing is that people want but they don't have, salespeople are the thing that gets them to the other side. Usually, it's information or product or service or technology, whatever it happens to be. But it's in those things when we're getting back to the original topic of selling. As a seller in the world, all you should be trying to do is make people curious about the gap. It's about their weight, it's about their income, it's about their personal protection, it's about their aesthetics, whatever it is actually about. Is this a top 10 priority for you right now, or is it outside your top 10 priority? And what's interesting is you talk to somebody who's got a weight problem or a financing problem or an insurance problem, and you say, you know what, it's a number 6 problem, but I put it in parentheses. Parentheses means I don't have to work on it,
Right.
but I know it's so important. You know what? Now that you're asking about like where I do prioritize it, it's probably a top 4, and I'm scared to do anything about it. And the coach consults says, hey, whatever. All my clients, what I do for them is I just take the parentheses off of a priority and actually put it into action. And if you're that, then we should definitely work together. And they like, you know what? Thank you. You're right. I hadn't thought about it like that. And let's start working together in whatever capacity it is. Like that was a little bit of, for all you viewers out there, that was some free sales coaching that if you just go back and replay that for a minute and put it into your own words, that's commissions right there.
Right. And I think also understand that, folks, that the gap that he's talking about, that ravine, whatever, the Grand Canyon, that can be in your head too.
Oh, it usually is.
Right. It actually more often than not is in your head, just like me with cold calling. You've given me the solutions multiple times, and it hasn't filled the gap in my head because for whatever reason I've ignored it, because the fear of doing something about it is more than the work that I would have. I don't even know the words. Anyway, you get my point, folks. If you don't get my point, then get with Dan because he knows his stuff. But yeah, so that Grand Canyon can be in your head as well.
Yeah. So, and it's an interesting little metaphor when I talk to people and I feel like they are stuck. Not only are they on the wrong side of the crevasse, they are also in concrete blocks. They are also attached to a chain. So like, well, it's not that I want to read the book, but I don't have enough money to get to the library. It's I don't have the book, crevasse, chains. I don't have the money to buy a book. Really? And then a consultant, a salesperson will start cutting the chains, breaking out the cement, and getting people across. And it's if you can find what it is that you do to get people across, just call yourself that. Like just I'm somebody who helps people like a little rope swing visual system here.
Right.
I'm a rope swing. I tie the rope up. I bring you the rope and I say swing across. I come to you and I bring you the ladder and I lay it across. I come to you and I give you the catapult and I send you across to the other side of this thing that's in your way. And what's interesting is this little literary device. When you do it right, people say, you know what? I need that ladder. I need that rope swing. I need that parachute. They're like, they don't need you. They actually need the analogy that you gave them.
The old thing about lifting up the drill and showing the board with the hole in it, right?
This is a great example. I did a whole paper on this one. So why don't you go ahead and run people through this example, and I'll just take it a little bit further if you'll allow me. So tell me the analogy about the drill in the hole.
Well, when people go out and they buy a drill, not because they want a drill, right? They don't want the drill. They want the hole in the board.
Yep.
And they need the drill to put the drill bit in to get the hole in the board. So that's
yeah. And I think that they don't even want the hole in the board.
Okay.
I don't think that they want the hole in the board. I think they want a place to put the bracket to hold up the closet rod.
Right.
I don't think that they want the closet rod hung up. I think that they want the clothes off of the ground. I don't think that they want the clothes off the ground. I think they want to give their kids a place to actually hand their clothes to be civilized. I don't think that they want their kids to have a place to be, like hang up their clothes and be symbols. I think they want a way in which they can stop yelling at their kid for stupid shit. So that analogy, it's not enough, because what we really, really, really want, and this is as a true salesperson, like when you're really asking people, really, 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 what are you trying to get out of this?
The
And
Bob.
then they say, I don't want to. It's not that I don't want to yell at my kid. I want to stop yelling at my kid. Is that what you really want? No. Like I want my kid to feel more loved than I was as a kid. Like you're gonna find people just like I had to hold back a little emotion. They're like you find people who will just crash
Right.
into what they're really trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Every single time I yell at my kid about the clothes on the ground, it reminds me of my abusive father or my abusive mother or blah blah blah
Right.
blah blah. And I don't want to be that person. You're like, okay, cool. So how about this? I work with people who have better relationships with their kids. That's exactly what I want. How much will it cost? $350 for me to drill that hole in the wall and hang your clothes up like I'm a handyman. But that's
Right.
how deep I would get into somebody's
Right.
life, because sometimes people, they just need to, again, have somebody else take the parentheses off of their little roadblock of what they think that they want.
Right. Well,
So
like I went to a trade show last Thursday, and it was a real estate trade show. So barter doesn't work for real estate agents that don't own their own brokerage, right? That don't own their own firm. So I came up with the idea of, you know what? I'll start a new business. I'm an ideas guy. Ideas that move your business forward. And everybody says, well, but what's the name of the company? I said, the name of the business is Ideas That Move Your Business Forward. And they're like, well, that's too long. I don't care. The name of my business is I have ideas that move your business forward. Well, and so the lady put me down. She didn't want to use ideas that move your business forward in the pamphlet. She used Ed Fox Consulting. That's not my business. It's not, my business is not Ed Fox Consulting. My business is Ideas That Move Your Business Forward. Yes, but what's your business name? Ideas That Move Your Business Forward.
if somebody can call themselves Google, why the hell can't you call yourself that?
Right. Good point. I'm going to use that from now on. But the thing is, people are afraid to. My dad always said that I had to get better at implementing my ideas. He would say things like, he said, he would come up to me and say, well, why didn't you do that? I said, oh, well, I was gonna. When I got around to it, and so I've got the round to it's now. But, when I get around to it, I'm going to do that. And he says, 3 frogs sitting on a log. They all decided they were going to jump off. How many jumped off? None, because they didn't take the action.
Yeah. My mom used to say, if wishes were horses, then beggars would ride.
And you looked at her and went, what?
No, I mean, it's like, think about all the people like, I wish I could do that.
Right.
So you wish you could invest in real estate? That's the wish. Seems like it's kind of like a activity. Like it's not. I don't think that wishing is actually like the component. Like I don't think that wishing equals real estate activity. I think that there's like learning and doing and failing equals real estate. Like wishing has nothing to do with it. Same thing with everything else. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do this. Like at the end of the day, some people are going to have a block on what they think that they can do actually. That I can't actually pick up a phone. Okay, let's try it. Well, no, I can dial a phone, but I know, but you just told me you couldn't dial a phone. And as soon as I pick up a phone to dial it, you say you can't. So what is it actually? Well, I don't know who to call. Call this number right here. Well, no, 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 no. Like, okay, what is it actually? Oh, I don't know what to say. Read this script. Well, I don't want to sound robotic. Okay, practice it. What is it actually? Well, I used to call people for this other company, and somebody was nasty on the phone with me a couple times, and I just can't do it anymore.
I'm afraid, and I don't want to be rejected. That's my hang up, right? I'm afraid of being rejected.
So what's interesting is there's a methodology that I've seen and taught that is uh, the rejectionless cold call.
Right. So like a third person approach, a third party approach. No.
And then you call people and you ask for something that's not actually what you want.
Okay.
And so, Ed, if I wanted to sell you sales coaching, and I call you up and say, hey, Ed, I'm interviewing local business owners. You're a local business owner. Um, Kevin Watson at BNI suggested I reach out to you. And he said that you're in business, and I have a request. I'd like to ask you 5 questions about business. It can be right now. We can schedule time. Would you be open to answering 5 questions about business? Like, what do you do? What's working? What's already? I'm just trying to help other people in business. If you've overcome a challenge that other people are facing, that maybe I can share what you did. Would that be okay with you?
Sure. How
Cool.
can I help?
So I ask you, yeah, exactly. So I asked you the 5 questions, and I was like, hey, Ed, do you know anybody else in business who might be as friendly as you to answer 5 questions?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let me give you their info.
Okay, cool. So our time is good right now. I'm going to call this other person. I'm going to drop your name. Is there anything else that you'd like to ask of me?
No, I don't think so. I'm good.
Okay. Generally speaking, that's not the answer because
Oh,
people are
okay.
like, well, actually, like, what have I not told you? Like, I haven't told you what I do, right?
Right.
Well, hey, Dan, well, what do you do?
Okay. So I get that, right? When I invite you onto the podcast,
Yes.
I do a Nashville 2 podcast, and people go, well, how do you make money with this? I say, I don't. This is all for your benefit. I'm getting the credibility of being out there and being in front of people, but it's about promoting your business and giving you a free platform. And they go, well, how do you make money? And I said, well, let's talk about that offline. And then I talk about what I do.
Yeah. So you do that rejectionless sales. Like you have the model built out. And if all you do is just call people invited, like if you call business owners who would also be a perfect fit for Trade Bank, you're like, well, I do a couple of things. I expose people's business through podcasts. We have long conversations about business topics, and I also increase people's, like I increase people's image that way, and I also increase people's marketing with a couple other tools. But that's for well, what do you mean you increase people's business? So now you're having them engage. What do you do? How do you do that? Who do you work with?
They've given me permission. They've asked.
And at that point, it's like presto poof. It's no longer a cold call.
Right.
And so, how can you possibly be rejected if they're asking you what you do?
Right. Yeah.
And you just say, I do this for these types of people who face these types of challenges. And it costs about this much money. And this is about how long the contract is. And it really works for some people. And the people it doesn't work, I just give them their money back. Well, I think it would work for me. Well, I mean, maybe.
Maybe.
Let's. And so now only people who are actually curious to go through your process will ask you about your process.
Right.
And everybody else who doesn't ask you about your process, you didn't ask them to buy. So there actually can be no rejection, hence rejectionless sale.
Right. Yep.
I just take away the snake.
Take away the snake. Explain that.
Your snake is the cold call.
Right.
The rejection. If we take away the snake, then there's nothing to be there. Like there's no snake.
Nothing to be afraid of. No fear. And you're right.
Because you can actually call it a phone call to invite people onto a podcast. It is technically no longer a sales prospecting call. And this is like I say, keep it 4th level. So if I like to ask you about business, see if I can refer people to you, see if there's any people who you need me to refer you to. Maybe we get to the 4th, which is I still Trade Bank. If we start here, and they take us here, great. But if they never take us here, that's fine. But they'll never be able to sniff or understand or think that it's a sales call because we have 3 goals on top of what we really want to sell. When I call people in my current business and I ask them, hey, I just want to ask how business is, see if you're talking about market trends, I'd like to talk, business environment, what are you seeing, blah, blah, blah. How's it? What's it? Who's it? What do I do? Oh, so I actually work with people who have these 2 challenges. Oh, that's you. Oh, interesting. Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that, but I guess we should probably talk about that too. I let them catch me by surprise by asking about my business.
Right.
And when they say, hey, no problem, thanks, and I never talk to them again, I never ask them to be my wife or for a dance or for their phone number. I never actually allowed rejection to happen.
Right.
So it never happens. Like I am on a plane with no snakes.
Right. Yeah. And you're right. I've already got that set up with my podcast, and that's why it's easy to invite people onto podcasts, and a percentage of them become Trade Bank clients because they do ask me, well,
Yes.
what do you do that makes money if the podcasts don't make you money?
Yeah. And so let me ask you, we've got a couple more minutes here.
Yep.
Is there an example of a person who just was shocked at how well they do with Trade Bank? Like, what is the person? I know that we know there's somebody in our BNI group that was amazing with Trade Bank. Like, he really knew how to maximize that coupon.
Right.
I'm not talking about that person. Like somebody else who was like kind of skeptical about it, but it just really, really worked out for them. Like, what is that story without dropping too many names?
Sure. So I had a couple of franchises. I had a barter franchise, and I also had an advertising franchise. And I walked into this hair salon, and this lady said, "Oh, I love this newspaper. I'd love to advertise in it. I read it all the time, but I don't have any money." I said, "Well, have you heard of barter? If you got on this barter platform, I would actually go out and find you clients that would spend money with you, and then you can pay for your advertising with that." She goes, "Oh yeah, I'd love to do that. I don't think it will work for my business, but if it would work for my business, but don't come back and hit me up for the cash for the advertising if you don't get me the business for the barter." Right. And I said, "Okay, fair deal," because I gave her a money back guarantee anyway. She ended up doing about $10,000 a year, and that was 2015. It's now 2023 as I record this. She's been a member for 8 or 9 years, and she continues to be a member. And she's like, "Everybody should do this. This is amazing. I did not think it would work for me." But she spends it on business and personal stuff, everything from getting her house cleaned and painting her house to incentivizing her employees and having her windows washed at her business and doing her bookkeeping on Trade and website on Trade and, all sorts of stuff. And that was just one hairdresser at a lower level at $10,000. But the one that I had that most interested me was already a client when I bought the business. He has 3 restaurants, and he's done I think it's like $450,000. I think it's 472 or something, $1,000 in trade, and he spent almost 400,000 of it. Now, some people would say, "Oh, he's still sitting on $70,000," but over the years, he spent 400,000 barter dollars instead of spending cash.
Yeah,
at the cost of pancake batter.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you don't have the follow-up number for him, which is how many people used barter to get in his door who became lifelong, every week they'd go there once a week type of customers, where you never see that trade dollar again because they use their trade dollar for that one time, and now
they've sold their trade. Yeah, they've sold their trade dollar business that made them trade dollars. Now they're just paying cash because they like the food, or the people that they brought with them that were never on Trade.
All right, question for you. So I want to do some of my sales coaching on Trade. I have a Trade Bank profile that's not set up yet.
Yeah.
Would it be best for me to call people who are Trade Bank members and say, "Hey, I'm on Trade. I'm just curious who would be curious," or tell people they can pay and trade and try it? Like, it feels like for me, I should be prospecting inside the actual platform to people who are already Trade Bank members. What for consulting services, is that a better way to go?
I think so. But putting that out there and letting them know. The other thing I would think about is that you could call them and you could quite rightly say, "I'm a new Trade Bank member. I am not 100% sure about how this works," which is true, right? "I'm not 100% sure. Could you use some sales coaching and training if you could spend your trade dollars on it instead of spending cash? Would that be of interest to you, or do you have salespeople that would be of interest to?" But again, I'm a new Trade Bank member. I'm not sure. So you could sort of almost do that same sort of thing where there is no rejection because you're just doing market research.
How do you use it? What do you like? What do you not like? What do you wish would be different? By the way, what is something that if you saw it on Trade Bank and you didn't realize it, that you would suddenly spend it? Would it be an Airbnb? Would it be a boat? What about sales coaching? Would you ever get sales coaching? I've never seen sales coaching on there. Interesting. Would it be okay if I told you why I'm calling? Like, really? She's like, "Well, yeah. So I'm actually a sales coach, and I'm on Trade Bank, and I provide sales coaching for small businesses, and I do it on Trade only. So now that you know that there's this available, can we talk about like what you think you need in your business?" what's working, what's not working, what are you
Right.
doing, this, all those things. Like it could be like that would be that fourth level business information questionnaire, which is actually, I call it a perspective interview.
Right.
If they ask, they ask. If they don't ask, they don't ask.
Yeah. And people, if you're outside a trade bank area, understand that no matter where you are in the world, there is people that are bartering their products and services every single day.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the cash, but they have unsold capacity or unsold inventory, whatever it is. They will barter that. You just have to ask. And so be looking for barter platforms out there, or just do some one-on-one barter deals. Barter makes so much sense no matter where you are in the world. Anyway, so
yeah. For all of you out there, keep looking on Trade Bank. Eventually, I'm going to have a sales coaching platform out there. I'm trying to do a vacation a year through Trade Bank just in sales coaching. So if somebody's going to be talking for a living and they've got big ticket stuff and they're running into a lot of people who are saying no or not showing any kind of level of curiosity, that's what I fix. So, dude, we're gone almost an hour and a half.
I know we're good at that. We'll break this out even a couple of episodes, maybe. Dan, great having you on the show. I think we should do this on a regular basis, because I think just you and I talking could add a lot of value to people that are interested in the things that we've got experience in.
So we'll actually have to do like a bouncing back karaoke type thing. Your podcast on even months, my podcast on odd months, and go back and forth.
Like the crossover that we do in series, which bugs me to death sometimes. Oh, you got to watch Chicago Fire, then you got to watch Chicago PD, and then you got to watch Chicago something else to get the whole story, right? Or Law and Order does it, FBI does it, all the shows that I watch.
I believe I think that's an amazing marketing idea, and I fully believe that the first person who came up with that idea got laughed out of the room at NBC and was probably fired.
Yeah,
no, you understand. So. We're going to tie them all together. You're dude. Hey, thanks for being here, but that's crazy. It's as crazy as a person who said, "Let's make a phone with no buttons." We can't do that.
Right.
So anyhow, crazy.
Well, the last one. Yeah, the first time I ever saw a crossover was when the Flintstones appeared on the Jetsons, or the Jetsons appeared on the Flintstones. One or the other was the first ever crossover I ever saw as a kid, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So,
well, yes, I mean, if you think about some of the cartoon movies where they have all of the Nintendo characters coming out,
right?
Like there's been Sonic movies, but when they have them all in one place, it's actually it is kind of an interesting.
The Lego movie, yeah. Well, you saw it with Happy Days. You saw it with Happy Days. Go to Laverne and Shirley, and go to Mork and Mindy, and that sort of stuff growing up. Anyway. Most people that are listening to this probably have never heard of any of those. So,
all right, my man. Thanks. Always good talking with you. We'll do another one.
Okay, we'll see you later. Bye-bye. G'day again. Well, that's it for the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like us, subscribe, follow, write a 5-star review. All the good stuff. Thanks a lot for listening, and look forward to having you listen to the next one.